Hi, good morning, eighth grade. Today we're going to answer the questions that you had based on the discussion about U.S. growth, expansion, sectionalism, and the Missouri Compromise. So, some really big topics that we're going to discuss today. So, it might be a little bit longer video, but it'll be very important because these things will continue as we move towards the Civil War. So one of the questions, first question was list at least 5 changes that were brought about by the Industrial Revolution in the United States. And you have to understand here that farming, we were an agricultural country, and 96% of the people were involved in some way with farming. With the advent of the Industrial Revolution in the United States, people are going to start moving away from the farming life and into the factories, especially young women and children, and so they're going to move away. Factories became more prevalent, and so it took away from the home businesses a little bit because they could produce it cheaper and faster in factories. Because of this, travel became a little bit easier to move about because people wanted to move products. So they started building roads and canals and so forth. And there were people that wanted to make money on these things, and they were using the newly developed patent system to secure their ideas. And there were lots and lots of inventions there. And people that started moving into the cities, that kind of made it crowded and dirty and dangerous and polluted. And so then people started moving out further west, even all the way here on the Oregon Trail, as you studied when you were fourth graders. So there are other things that you could put in the answer, but there were a lot of changes that really were brought about by the Industrial Revolution. And you have rising labor issues that are going to come about later on. Describe the reason the Industrial Revolution started in New England. If you remember back in the very beginning of the year when we were talking about what New England lacked, and they lacked a deep soil that was rich in nutrients, and they had a shallow, rocky soil, but they also had lots of water, and factories need power. And so that water power is going to really start the process of industrialization in New England. And then, of course, they had lots of ports and natural resources there. And so New England became a logical place for the Industrial Revolution to start. Number 3, who was Eli Whitney, and what were 2 inventions that he was known for? So Eli Whitney is an inventor, and he invented the first invention was called the cotton gin. And cotton, if you've been in my class, then you had the opportunity to pick apart cotton, which I think many of you have. You know that it's difficult to pull the seeds out. And so here is an invention that is going to speed up the production of cotton. It's going to make it more efficient, more profitable. And so all of a sudden now more and more people are going to start planting cotton. The next invention was called interchangeable parts. And it was based on the idea that, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to know how to make an entire piece of equipment. Let's take a gun, for example. All you had to know was how to make the stock, or how to rifle a barrel, or how to make a trigger system, and then just put it all together. And so these factories were creating parts that were interchangeable with each other. You could mass produce them. You could get someone without the skill of a gunsmith to put it together. So these are Eli Whitney's inventions. Both are going to really spur on the Industrial Revolution. Describe the characteristics of the free enterprise system. The free enterprise system is developed to give competition a chance. It's developed to provide opportunity to compete in this free market without regulations, without restrictions, and so people are free to choose what they grow, what they produce, what they manufacture, and as long as you're competing, what you're competing for are really the best prices. Quality is definitely something that will come in too. What were some of the benefits of acquisitions of huge amounts of territory in the early 1800s? Well, the United States was frankly getting crowded. and they really needed more farmland. We were getting lots and lots of people coming, and so the benefit of this expansion of the United States was there was a lot more farmland available for people to move into. Who was Robert Fulton and what was he known for? Robert Fulton was an American engineer, inventor, and he kind of applied the steam technology, the steamboat technology, to a ship called the Claremont. And all of a sudden, that technology is going to be not just used only for ship transportation, but also for factories. So steam is going to be powering the Industrial Revolution. So that allows factories to develop outside of New England, although remains the main industrial center for the United States at this time. Let's see, what was the era of good feelings? Well, this was really after the War of 1812. You don't have a Federalist Party. You pretty much just have one party. And so there's not a lot of arguing and bickering. And it really is a time of national pride. Here we, for the second time, had defeated Great Britain. And so they were the strongest nation in the world at that time. And so it was definitely an excellent feeling. That's why it's called the era of good feelings. Let's see. List out 4 issues that caused sectional conflict between the North, South, and the West. So first of all, we have to look at what is their primary mode of making money. And in the North, it is shipping, it is manufacturing, raw materials, and in the South, it is a plantation-based economy based on rice, sugar, indigo, and the like. And eventually cotton will be there as those products. And so they each have their own sectional interests and differences. And in the West, here you have large amounts of territory they would like to see developed. They would like to get that expanded. And so they all have different motivations here. And so what you're going to see is you're going to see 3 Congress people that are going to represent each of these areas. So Daniel Webster is really going to represent the New England or the northern states. John C. Calhoun is going to represent the southern view in Congress. And then probably the most important person of this time period was a man from Kentucky by the name of Henry Clay. And he gets the name of the Great Compromiser because he sometimes will side with the South and sometimes side with the North, but all the while trying to hold the country together through compromise. And we're going to talk about some of those really interesting compromises. And it looks like I skipped a question. I apologize, number 7. What were some of the improvements in transportation? How did these improvements lead to westward expansion? Well, with steam power, you're eventually going to have trains. You're going to have canals. The Erie Canal is going to open up the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River to the industrial center along the Hudson River and down into New York. These National Road, it's not very big at the time, but it's a start, and they're going to start building more roads like that. They're going to finance them like a toll road if you've been on a toll highway before. That's one way they're going to finance it. So that's going to lead people to move to the new opened territory in the West. All right. And what are some examples of internal improvements? Well, we talked about that already. That would be, your canals, your roads, your railroads, that type of thing. Those are internal improvements, and so they were part of what Henry Clay called his American system. And his American system really consisted of 3 parts. One, it was internal improvements. How can we get the the products to market, I guess, is probably the best way to say it. Another factor in the American system was a national bank. And there was a lot of tension about this because it wasn't written in the Constitution. It was really a Hamiltonian idea that we needed a national bank. And so, again, something that Henry Clay espoused to as well was having a national bank. And third part of this American system was a series of tariffs to protect northern industry, especially from the industry of Great Britain. Okay, so let's see. How did the American system highlight the regional differences? Well, I think it's pretty clear. The South is like, why do we need internal improvements? Why do we need tariffs? Because those were things that they didn't really feel were necessary. But the North and the West did, and so they would collude with each other, work together on those type of things to give to give them an advantage over the South. And the South, they were primarily interested in making sure that their products could get to market. So in some ways, they also benefited from internal improvements, but there were definitely regional differences highlighted in that system. There were strong disagreements about tariffs, as we talked about the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, again, protesting the idea that the national government could issue tariffs. All right, here is a big one, and this is called the Missouri Compromise. So I'm going to take a little bit of time here and talk about this and what led to it. And so, as you know, the Senate is an equal body. That means that every state, regardless of size, is going to have the exact same number of senators. And so that balance in the Senate was pretty important for the issue of slavery. And at the time, they had 11 slave states and 11 free states. And Missouri is applying to come into the Union as a slave state. And that's going to upset the balance of the Senate. And so there was a proposal that was put forth by, of course, Henry Clay. And he suggests that, okay, we will draw a line. And we will deal with all of the new territory that was purchased, the Louisiana Territory. And we will draw a line at the southern border of Missouri, which is a line at 36 degrees, 30 minutes north latitude. And Missouri is, of course, going to be above that line. But everything below that line, slavery in the new territory would be allowed. And everything above 3630, except Missouri, would be free. Now, that didn't deal with the inequality in the Senate, and so Maine was really close to applying for statehood. And so Maine, of course, would come in as a free state. And so the Missouri Compromise was there to deal with this new territory. Should it be should there be slavery or should it be free? Maine comes in as a free state and thereby preserving the balance between the slave states and the free states. No slavery north of 3630 in the Louisiana Territory, or the territory of the Louisiana Purchase. Okay, so that's the Missouri Compromise. Very important. It really does become a huge part of the Dred Scott case, which, if you were in the mock trial that we did, that was one of the key points. Okay, so how did the decisions in McCulloch versus Maryland and Gibbons versus Ogden strengthen the federal government? Here, the states were trying to, in McCulloch versus Maryland, they wanted to tax the national bank. And here's a state wanting to tax a federal bank. And so in that case, the federal government is going to win that case, and it's going to strengthen the federal government because of that, saying that no, the states do not have the authority to tax a federal bank. And in Gibbons versus Ogden, here we have tariffs between states, and so that violated the Interstate Commerce Act, and so that was found to be that only Congress can regulate trade between the states. So states can't put a protective tariff up against other states. Like, for example, if they were producing shoes in New York at a cheaper price, New Jersey put a tariff on them and making them more expensive, then people in New Jersey wouldn't buy shoes from New York. They would buy local shoes. I know that's a horrible example, but you see the point, I hope. Okay. There's a Rush-Bagot Treaty and of 1818 and the Adams-Onis Treaty. And so this really establishes a boundary between Canada and the United States. It gets the British out of the Great Lakes. This is the Rush-Bagot Treaty of 1818. And then you have the Adams-Onis Treaty, which kind of establishes that a deal with Spain and allows us to purchase Florida at that time. So I hope that you are all doing well. I will see you this afternoon. We're going to have a Google Meet, and I hope that you're all there. Until then, we have some big issues coming up here in our class, some big topics to discuss. I think the rest of the year is going to be fun. I'll be looking forward to seeing you in a little bit. Bye.